everybody, and welcome to The Lifting. This episode was recorded on June 27th, 2022. And tonight we are going to basically talk a little bit about death, about dying, about crossing over, about being in between, or whatever people want to perceive that to be. So we have a lot to talk about and a lot we want you to think about on this subject. It's pretty interesting in the United States that really talking about death, talking about the process of dying, including it into our culture, really has been quite taboo over the years. You kind of cast it aside. And whereas in other cultures, it's embraced, it's a part of life. We kind of would like to encourage it to be a part of the discussions of life. And when we're done talking about it, we hope you guys will feel there is a good reason why that you want to do this and talk about it in advance and spend some time thinking about it and spend some time setting intention for yourself on what you want to occur. So we want to have this discussion. We know over the past few years, there's been, a great passing more than normal in these last few years. And so we think it's really a discussion that should be had and people should think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think maybe the affirmation and blessing to start with should reflect that.
Yeah, so we always will start a show, as you guys know, with an affirmation and blessings. So basically, blessings to all that are here. We are so happy that you're interested to hear this discussion regarding the aspects of death and dying and the soul's response to it all. We hope it actually provides you comfort in feeling that you're in control with what happens to you, so that you can, again, live life to its fullest, knowing what your intentions are moving forward. So blessings to all of you that are here. So in general, the way that, Chris asked me to start this off, one of the things that we have noticed over these many years now, and some of it has had us have to rethink some belief systems that we currently had, or were given to us by generations before on their thoughts about it. And what we've actually experienced sheds a whole new light on this subject. And in sense, what a conclusion that we've come to is that there is an importance, I think, to have a set intention in play as early as you want, but as early as possible on what you think that'll look like for your highest good, whatever that really is, but that it's important. So I want to talk about two examples that are near and dear to my heart. It actually has to do with the passing of my brother and my sister. There are 4 siblings. My brother passed at the age of 48. My sister passed at the age of 58. And my sister and I are the siblings that are left. I'm old enough now that, I've had grandparents pass. I've had different people pass around me. But the reason I bring up my siblings is because it was more recent and in a time that this exploration into everything that Chris and I are doing, it was during all of this time. And so, seeing them after they passed, for me, it was more my brother that I saw more during that time, right after he passed, as ghost-like than I did my sister. But just, discussing what little we know of their journeys. And then we want to discuss some other things that we've noticed that have happened to people that have died. Some have made it over, some have not. And we want to talk about that a little bit with you all. So for my brother, that those who haven't heard this before, again, this will be brief, is basically my brother was simply sitting at a stoplight. He was on a motorcycle, first car in line. And unfortunately, a younger person who was busy looking at their cell phone, unfortunately, at the time, plowed right into the back of him as he was stopped at a stoplight. He didn't die immediately on the scene, but he did die 2 weeks later of complications that arose from being hit 2 weeks later. The interesting thing about my brother, again, is there was an event that happened the night he passed, like at around 7 or so in the morning. But the night before, Chris and I happened to not be in town. We were in a hotel having to go do something. And there was a weird event that happened in the room. It was, to me, it was after midnight. Realized that the phones were on, didn't want the phones to go off or ring. So, I'm pretty anal about shutting off the phones. Literally got out of bed, go over to where the phone is across the room to shut it down. And it's very weird experience, almost like a board. It didn't really have a shape. It was more like this, but it was also dark. This board-like thing just came at a super speed towards me, went right through me, right back, and kept going. It actually scared the crap out of me. And basically, I ran and jumped back into bed, and I told Chris, if you want those phones off, you're going to have to do it yourself. There was also, something interesting that happened, I think, a little bit later, but I don't think we need to talk about that. So in general, then the next morning is when my brother unexpectedly passed. What I soon found out is that was my brother. And although this was unexpected, right, on a sense that we expected the recovery to occur from the accident, not this other issue that happened so quickly. However, that was him, and he made a beeline and he checked on everybody
as he was passing, or just before he did, which shows the soul was starting to already leave. It was already starting to leave.
So he didn't know. I don't think he really knew. I think this was even somewhat, but some part of him knew and wanted to start. Now, again, he was only 48 years old. And so, there was probably also, from what we understand with Michael, when he passed, there was a huge sense of urgency for my brother to reach out to try to communicate with people. Now, I saw him ghost-like in my father's home. My father had an experience, although he still wonders whether that was really real or not. My sister had an experience. And then he knew that Chris could even see him more clearly and talk to him than I could. And so there was this series of communications. Now, my brother had made it to what I call the way station. And it's kind of funny. I like to kind of refer sometimes what people call heaven. I'm going to go to heaven, but I like to refer to it as a way station. There seems to be a need for a transition or
like a healing, or
some people will call it a healing. I don't think we really know 100% what happens, but whatever is needed to help with the healing and transition to move back to where you were. So a lot of people, and sometimes if there was an illness, people sometimes will wake up in a hospital-like setting because that's what they're last familiar with an illness. Some people wake up to something totally different, but whatever it is, if you've made it there, and I'm very specific, if you've made it there, then there seems to be some sort of setup to give you the comfort that you need, whatever that setup, it could be a field, whatever that setup needs to be in order to help you transition. Now, what we've also seen is some people transition quicker than others. The biggest thing for my brother is that he had 2 young girls. And although he would say that this was when he was supposed to pass, this was not an accident, he was meant to go when he went. And that was a big deal for him to get across, that he was worried about, again, his daughters and the growing up of his daughters. He was concerned about that. Although there was also part of him that knew or was in transitioning, knowing that things are going to be okay, but it was like a little bit of a tug of war for him, because he knew that we could see him. He knew that there could be communication. He would literally come, make his presence known, say a few things, and then literally you could see the people coming to get him, right? Like he was trying to contact. And I think it was explained to him that over time, when he recovered a little bit more and understood a little bit more, he would realize that these interactions really shouldn't be occurring. And so they would kind of stop. They would, he wouldn't be really doing that or whatever, but he was really resistant. I will tell you, he was really resistant to that. And he kept making a beeline, making a beeline. Over time, it lessened and lessened.
Because as he was transitioning, he even approached us when we were in a restaurant one time. This was after he passed, of course. What had happened was he was trying to say something or do something at the time. I can't remember exactly what. And he
actually did a lot of venting.
But he was told he had to go back to doing his transitioning. One of the funniest things this man ever pulled after he passed was playing a practical joke on your stepmother. After I'd been done with a session, she walks up in, and he walks up behind her, and she could feel him. I could see like part of his face. I couldn't see the whole thing. It was like cloudy on one end, and it was like half face, but it was enough to know who it was. And I said, he's going to play a practical joke. And about less than a second later, the spider drops in front of her, like they normally do, but it was right in her face. So, he knew she was definitely afraid of spiders. So, I found that hilarious, and he knew I'd find that hilarious. So that was basically for both our benefits. Yeah.
And she knew.
And that was validation that it was him. She felt it was him.
Making a joke or doing something. So anyway, so that was kind of the experience. Now, my brother and I did not have, let's say, meaningful conversations on the subject matter. Okay, so that's actually important to know. It's not like we had been talking about it, that, we had come to this, dynamic or family agreement or whatever about our belief system. We actually did not do that. So I say that to you because he still, for whatever reason, made it to where he needed to go without much of an issue. And then again, had to go through a transitioning process, as that process and his remembrances of who he actually is and from the past then came forward. His communication with us did become less and less.
And then non-existent.
And then really non-existent right now, although every now and then I feel I can feel him around, but it's really not even communication.
So what I want to also say is sometimes when that's happening, they're going up in frequency or faster moving frequency to the point where you don't really see them, you just feel them because the frequency differential is so much. My mother had this experience after a friend of hers died from lung cancer, where as this person was transitioning, she saw this person enter her room in what she thought was a dream state. It really wasn't. It was just a faster moving frequency. And saw this friend of hers lay next to her, felt like she almost had like a beating heart and everything. She was transitioning from one form to the next one. It was passing through one from one to the other, into one frequency to another, and was just basically saying goodbye. You're not really supposed to touch ghosts. Humans are not supposed to touch ghosts because there is a entanglement issue, and I'll get to that in a moment. What happened next was she saw the bedroom door open where she was, and then immediately she just went, "Grandma," and she intuitively knew, but saw no one. This was because the frequency was so much higher, and something was really wiping my head there for a moment. It was something I just said I was going to mention.
Well, I'll just
no. Can you please remind me of?
I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to continue on with a little bit of the story because there were some important parts. So, like we said about in the midst of a transition, so And Katrina believes that it was her grandmother that helped bring her friend through.
Yes, yes,
So
that's it, yeah.
one of the things, though, which was interesting, is that her friend, though, was still bald, as if she had the effects of the chemotherapy and different things she had gone through. There was and this was such a meaningful conversation. And Katrina was even confused. Why isn't she younger? Why isn't her hair? Because, you hear a lot about people returning to a younger age. Why doesn't she have hair? This, that, and the other. But then something also meaningful happened a little bit later, where the message did get back to her that, through another friend who was psychic, that made a point to call Katrina to say, your friend came through and she wanted you to know she had her hair now. So there's something about a transitionatory period of being human, of thinking things in the way that we perceive them, understand them. And it's not necessarily for everybody this instant flip that you remember everything from the other side. There's kinds of this transitory period that can happen with people where, again, maybe if they were sick, then they heal from it.
And then they get that.
And then they can do that. Now, again, we're not saying for everybody, but we're trying to give you a few examples of things that we actually, know about. As far as my sister's passing, my sister was 58 years old. She literally went, she wanted a new job. She had taken the day off from her normal work and was going to go to a new job interview. And she was up in the morning. Then she decided, oh, you know what? I'm just going to lay down and take a nap for a little bit. And so she literally laid down and she did not wake up. Within 30 minutes, when her significant other came home to have lunch together, she was gone. And so the thing with what happened to my sister, again, and this is mainly through conversations with Katrina, it was very difficult. This was, my sister and I had spent a lot of time more in the line of work that we're doing here on the spiritual side. We had planned to do a bunch of things. We were working on projects together. We were doing all of this and making some plans. So when, not that I wasn't devastated when my brother passed, but this one was the true surprise, because, literally she just laid down to go to sleep and didn't wake up. So the interesting thing, though, with Jenny is that we had a lot of conversations about this. We had discussed a lot of things and belief systems and skills and intuition that in our family was never allowed to be talked about, although on both sides, mother and father, there were experiences that had happened in other generations, but never like Chris and his family, where things were openly talked about. It didn't happen. But through our the last few years that when Jenny was with us here, there was a lot of conversation about it. We had been talking about how people can be fooled, how there's tricks that can happen, the false reincarnation cycle, and all of these types of things that we had talked about. And pretty much, I think both of us, in our own personal intention, had actually decided, oh, that ain't happening to me, kind of thing. You know what I mean? This is not going to happen. This is going to, go this way in our own minds, for our own selves, let's say. So the interesting thing about Jenny is that, I will say one sad thing, because I do feel sorry for people that this happens to. Katrina happens to be a person that sometimes will get a sense that somebody's going to pass. And I feel horrible for people who have that. You would always want to think everything's a blessing. To me, I'm like, I don't think that's a blessing. She was panicked for days because she thought a close friend of hers was going to pass, somebody who felt sister-like. And then out of the blue, basically I call her to say, the sister was my sister. Jenny just passed. And, and so pretty much everyone was devastated. When I was back, with Katrina, shortly after all of that, Katrina already was seeing Jenny. I had just taken some quiet time and was out on a screened-in porch and was sitting there by myself, and she is clear as day. Jenny was right there. Jenny was right there with me, although I was in a shock situation and couldn't perceive anything at all. Then there were a couple of other experiences that happened that Katrina didn't understand, but I understood. And it was Jenny trying to communicate to Katrina to pass information on to me because I was in too much shock and trauma to be able, to allow what needed to be allowed to see her myself. I couldn't do it. It was really a very difficult time. And so the interesting thing about Jenny, which even Katrina still talks about, is the rapidness apparently that Jenny transitioned. I mean, just like you have mentioned before with other people that have just boom. They
like
just
Brian, he was like 2 days.
Yeah, they just transitioned so quickly. But Brian also, I think, had a certain belief system in place, even though he died younger than anyone would have thought as well, another person who died younger. So the interesting thing about that, again, two different experiences. Jenny didn't seem to feel the need to come back and rehash things or re-talk about things, not like my brother did. So even their experiences and their needs, not the same at all. She wanted to make sure that, messages got back to me through Katrina. She also made a big point to come back to make sure Chris got a specific message, which was to say that what we're doing, what we're exploring, what we're trying to bring forth, she says it's some of it is misunderstood. We're doing pretty good.
Yeah, we only knew like that much.
But that we've only begun to scratch the surface, even with the things that we bring up that no one else is talking about. She wanted to, make sure that we understood that exploration was going to be huge, that there was no way we were going to know it all, and that we really were just starting to scratch the surface of knowledge. Good job so far. You know what I mean? Keep up the good work, but just don't get into that mindset that you're going to know it all. Don't. You're just in the beginning stages of understanding. So I bring that up now in that context because it really is something that in what she was saying has to be applied to the subject matter. I think we, Chris and I'm sure many of you out there have had conversations with people or family or in current belief systems, be it a spiritual belief system or a religious belief system, have been taught, have been, kind of accepted as fact is what happens, really what happens. And you may occasionally run into a ghost, or you may occasionally run into this or that or whatever. And what we've been experiencing is not that. So again, in the whole concept of deny the known, that it was a moment where we didn't even really realize we needed to deny the known. I think that's the interesting thing, is that you may not realize that certain belief systems are there and are kind of solidified, that you don't even realize it needs to be relooked at and it's maybe not correct. And so that's another reason why we wanted to have this conversation, because now it's been our experience that we have to deny the known of what we've been taught, of what we heard, of what we thought we understood, and literally just now relay the experiences that we've been having and seeing and everything, to reevaluate what we think are all of the different possibilities, because it's not just one thing. And so, and again, to the conclusion of, again, I'll just reiterate this now, to the conclusion of, by the end of this, that you can understand that this is important for you to think about now, and to also set an intention as early as possible.
Yes, an intention as early as possible to actually be in the proper place where you are supposed to be, afterlife wise. And I hate saying afterlife because there's really no such thing. It's just continuous. That's important in the wording. But one thing I was struggling to remember before was something that had confused me for many years. This applies to the next thing I'm going to get to. Now, this is probably an important part to segue. In a lot of different ghost occurrences, you've heard me mention why ghosts are the way they are in other recordings. I'm not going to rehash that specific part. I'm going to another specific part. When a being is still, a person is still a ghost. There was something that's been a mystery to me. Whereas why, when you say you see a ghost, say, and then you go to say hug the person and they back up like they're shocked or something like that. Like my mother saw like my great grandmother in a house. You know, it was on Leland Avenue in Chicago, Illinois, where I originally grew up. And the whole place where the SSP thing took place, all of it, that was the house. When my great grandmother died, my mother saw her looking out the kitchen door and said, "Grandma," and then turned around and was shocked that she could be seen. And when my mother went to go hug, she backed up. Like my mother chased her all over the damn place. She's like, "Now come here," like that, like somebody probably would in a situation like that. I pulled that crap too, and you get the same reaction every time. And I had always wondered about this. My mother found a passage in the Bible where Jesus said something, whereas you cannot touch me until you cannot touch me because I have not seen my Father yet. And there is a weird reality to a real concept that was said here. And, I'm not a Bible thumper or anything like that. I'm the last person that put this, but the real concept is entanglements. When there is a ghost and you touch them, you begin to fuse because they're attempting to basically filter back down through you. And this is how some possessions get started as well. Or you transform almost into them. And this is also why ghosts fuse with demons and fuse with other entities, even themselves sometimes. Weird physics that go on in this, but it is a type of thing that does not happen once they've transitioned at all. You can kind of touch them all you want if you're capable of touching that frequency, and nothing happens except you feel that higher whoosh when they're in spirit. The thing with the ghost is I ran into my grandmother, both grandmothers I should say, when they passed. They reacted exactly the same, but the only reference they ever had was that biblical quote, and then it dawned on me it was referring to entanglements and referring to possessions. I also had, when I had my knee repaired at the time, jury rig repaired, I call it being having Frankenstein put back together. I had the tendons of a young girl, about an 18 or 19-year-old Hispanic girl, I found out was the donor of the tendons and ligaments in my leg. But I found out she died in a car wreck. And that was some of the savable parts. And she had a whole list of what she was willing to donate: eyes, kidneys, or any organs that weren't damaged, essentially, any parts that weren't damaged, anything you can think of. And even skin, they were able to use it too. And they had it frozen for some time. And there was a ghost that followed me around for quite a while. And I had dreams of this girl kind of fusing with me. It's because I carried her parts with me, or what originally belonged to her, until my energy acclimated it. And I made it so that my energy eventually claimed it, and I passed her on. She was literally hooked to them like a ghost would be to a haunted object. And I won't get into the haunted objects things. That's for a conspiracy sector what we're going to do somewhere down the road here. But that's a whole hour in and of itself. This was interesting because I sent her on, and then I acclimated the tendons and ligaments in my leg. And the reason I bring that up is because it was still that fusion that was taking place and is causing a instability in my energy. I'm saying this part because it segues into another that I think is very important. I even ran into this concept as of today. And it's something that has frustrated me to no end. And Joanna's heard this. My mother has heard this. She too was frustrated with this. And I've not really ever been able to get past this frustration. In fact, I've gotten more jaded as time gone on to this particular part of this. And this goes with the title of the show, Do We Know We're Dead? And you don't know how many ghosts I've heard in my lifetime, from the time that I was a teenager till now. You don't know how many I've seen asking if they've died. And I've gotten to the point where I've got real cynical about it, and I probably shouldn't, but that's where my brain has gone with it, because I've seen it so many hundreds of times. Ghosts will, per that entanglement issue that I've said previously, it's called empathic transference, where it will transfer how they died onto you. If it's something that's either buried within their what's left of their psyche, or if they carry with that energy, it will literally imprint those codes onto you, and you then, through the body's molecular cellular solid ability, will manifest that illness in some intensity or other. And it could build over a period of time. This is why you don't want ghosts in your house. The reason I bring this up, as I'll use a perfect example, one incident that happened today. And this goes with the fusion thing, and this goes with the Are We Dead thing. This was an old man that obviously had died during the whole 2020 debacle. And this person I was talking to said they felt there was something in the crawl space of their house, and they knew something was there. That was pretty dense. And I was like, okay, fine. It could be a demon or something, or some like trollish like being that crammed their way in there. And crawl spaces are pretty susceptible. Ghosts do it too. They even showed this in the movie The Sixth Sense, where the boy opens the crawl space door and knew somebody had been in there, had died in that space, or had crammed their way in that space, or he was hearing an echo in one of the spaces. And that was accurate the way they depicted it. But I pulled this being out that looked really lanky, really, had fingers out this long, and I figured, okay, this is something like some kind of goblin or something. And Isaac kept saying, no, this was human. Look at it a little closer. And this is like on the show Dead Files, where you see all these weird combination type creepy things they have on there going, why is this allowed, sort of thing. Why would the person's over so allow this sort of thing? Well, I noticed that there was something small demonic that was attached and had changed the shape of this ghost or this person. There had already been a trauma from the way they died, but this thing had attached to them because of what we always say is last rites, where you're giving permission to a being during the time of last rites, something demonic, because there's no such thing as last. You've heard us talk about that concept. There's eternal life. There's no such thing as last. Why would you be giving your rights away to the concept of last unless something wants you to see a finality to your existence so they can claim you in some fashion? And this happens in many cultures across the planet. Again, we've spoken about this part before on our Patreon. But I separated this from, it was a smaller demonic entity. It wasn't that large. I got rid of it. It was like a goblin or something that was attached to him. And I restored what this guy was supposed to look like at the moment he died. And he was an older man that had, obviously, they were trying to clear his airways, and they jammed a respirator down him, one of those tubes down him. And he had the hospital gown, and it was all like this on him and everything, and his head was all kind of cocked like this. And first, before he even spoke, I said, let me guess, you're going to ask me if you're dead. And, as incompassionate as that sounds, I knew it was coming. And he said, and I described other things. I said, let me guess, you had a respirator put down you, and you gave somebody gave you last rites. He goes, how did you know that? And part of me goes, I don't know. And that was the sarcastic side of me coming out. And, you know, the person I was talking to was laughing about it and everything. But in all actuality, this isn't really a laughing matter. We got a little laugh out of it. But in all actuality, this was actually more serious than we were allowing it to be. Because I've seen it so many thousands of times, it just wears on you after a while, especially since 2020 with the whole sea of ghosts and the whole COVID debacle and everything that took place then. This person, you know, and I started to ask questions. I said, basically, do you know where you are? Do you know how you died? Do you know why you're in our presence? Do you know why you were in the person's crawl space? You know, stuff like that. Had no answers for me, none. And I found I didn't even know the person's name. I don't think he knew his own name. And
another thing that's important that you did ask, that you felt that something wasn't right, had to do with when Chris pulled off the demon and you took care of the demon. He's pointing at it. Do you see what
do you see what I see? You know, I left it there to see if he could see it. And, he could not. And I said to him, I said, do you see this? You know, I cut its head off. I said, you see that? You were reaching for its hand. Was I? And I was like, yeah, you went like this. And the previous ghost that I'd just taken care of previous to me finding him was an older lady. And well, there was this weird hand that looked exactly like that other being that I got rid of, hand coming through the ceiling. And they went, Jesus? Like this. And part of me goes, oh, for God's sakes, I'm like this. But because I can see what it is, because I'm in a frequency set that I can see exactly what it is.
But it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting concept because, again, we've said this before, that if something is around you, you could think for a moment or two or three or whatever, that it's something benevolent. You may see an image in your head, it looks benevolent. You may get this feeling, it feels benevolent. Or you may have a current belief system that says anything beyond us only is benevolent. And so what is so significant about this and what we're discovering is that when you pass, you are who you are.
When you pass,
you're not magically
there.
Omnipotent, knowing that you're not.
Some do. I have seen it, but
right.
Some a lot aren't.
But I think, again, the importance is that we're trying to bring across is the importance of trying to set intentions in advance, you know what I mean, in order to I'm going to have to take a sip in a minute, and be prepared for, you know, be prepared for what's upcoming, because it's kind of surprised us. We're surprised by this. We're like, okay, you didn't get what this was. You were reaching for something. And again, what we also couldn't quite, although the one person said they thought it was Jesus's hand, the other one didn't even remember reaching up, but there was an attempt to reach, of course, not to something malevolent. In their perception, what they're looking at is something not malevolent. So trying to understand that kind of, cloaking of what something really can be, cannot be, it's still possible to happen during that time. So again, not to throw a religion under the bus or anything like that, but certain religious belief systems where you are giving yourself over to them. There is doctrine that may be repeated during the weekly services or something where you're constantly re-giving yourself over to something. Same thing that happens within the last rites conversation.
Or baptism, also that too.
Well, baptism, but there's a little more, I think there is a little grace with that, because a baby,
there's a little bit, yeah.
But my point is basically that something gets set into motion for a potential of sleight of hand, basically, depending on that belief system. So if you couple that belief system that you're going to give yourself away, and or if you've been indoctrinated into believing something's coming to get you, okay, or in a sense that you're now your dutiful servant, again, going to your whatever, it seems that that belief system may set you up for some problems. You also have, again, groups of people that also seem to be very confused when they maybe don't have any sort of belief system. They may have had belief systems tied to their existence on Earth being more of, in tune even with nature or whatever, but not having any idea of an afterlife, of what that could look like. That sometimes will set people up to not be able to completely cross. Now, the one thing that we know about this, though, is that there isn't a lot of interference because it's still considered the same soul, and the soul gets the right to choose. So you have this potential confusion that can occur that may keep more people here as ghosts, but they're not necessarily, again, these omnipotent, I know what's going on. Now you have some that are deviant. You have some that are just like, you know what? I can mess with electricity. I can move objects. I'm a psychopath, and I'm a psychopath in between. And I like to mess with people and mess with them when they're sleeping. I've learned to move things or whatever, and they're there in their nice little psychopathic behavior, still in between it all. There isn't, from what we can tell, and I don't want, I'm not going to make anything 100%. We're a little bit frustrated because, we want to see a little more intervention for people that are in this state,
because they can cause human health conditions to the extreme sometimes, from the lower end to the higher end of the spectrum. And if they keep showing up, that puts a living human at risk. On the flip side of this argument, when they're asking if they're dead, why isn't there an actual true intervention for that sort of thing, and why are they essentially being pushed towards you even at great distances? I know about portals, I know about all of that, and transferring through thought. When you're in an energy state, you can stumble and end up from one state to another. I've seen that where they can go from all over the place, especially with technology all over the place, but the electrical lines all over the place. But with this particular man, though, one of the things that I asked him is like, where did you come from? And he did actually tell me it was New York. And I said, was this during the whole COVID debacle? Yes, it was. And we saw this a lot in 2020. There were throngs of them just from everywhere, especially New York State and New York City specifically. And this man, he said, I asked him, I said, I said, you know where you are right now? I said, you're in a completely different state than you were before, like literal U.S. state than you were before. I said, do you know where you're standing? I'm not going to mention where this is or whose house it was or anything, but the suffice to say, this person just looked around confused, did not know how they got there. And it turned out that during the whole 2020 thing, when the person was given last rites and they were consenting to that, this being coupled with them, and then went on its merry way as a fused entity or a bound being. That man became a bound being at that point. And actually through the insertion in the house was actually causing sickness there with that other being in tow like that, even though it was much smaller than he was. And also with other ghost occurrences, I don't always, notice when these ghosts are around because, I'm doing my thing. I'm doing, what I need to do. Granted, I need to be more due diligent in that area, but I put up barriers for a reason. And when there is a ghost around and it's affecting my health or it's affecting my mind or it's affecting something like that, making me vulnerable to other things, I get a little miffed. And like if it's if they show up, they might be running from some demonic entity. They've just come to the wall of my house. here comes the demon following him, or here comes the soul hunter following him, or here comes some goblin or something following him. And I was like, you just led them right to me. Why did you do that? And I get fairly defensive. I get fairly angry at that. It's like, you just led them to my house. How did you even know to come to me? How did you know this? And that is something that they never know. It's like, how did you know? And it's just like with this other old man. How did you know that at that specific time, at this specific place, on that geographical set of coordinates, that there would be someone there to either assist you or question you in some fashion? And they never know this. And I realize these are the energies lining up to where they can get help at some point, or you're learning a new concept or something about that reality in some way to expand your information. But on the flip side, or the antithesis of this can be harmful if it is not noticed. Like I had my computer messed with a while back. I did a little mini recording I can always add to this about this, where my computer battery drained so quickly that it messed up the plug area, and it was a ghost trying to hide in our garage again, like so many others have tried near the power box, and they try to use this as a sanctuary. And I make it quite clear, this house is not your church. You cannot you can't just cry sanctuary and run in here, because it does damage to us. It does damage to our equipment and to our livelihood and to our bodily functions. You can't do that. And I'm pretty adamant about that. But I have gotten to the point where I have become kind of merciless towards it as well. And I know from that perspective, it's got to be pretty odd to see somebody yelling at you about some things that are obvious to myself, extremely obvious, as I've seen it thousands of times, to someone who's just approached you and they've just been directed to your house like a gas station attendant directing somebody down the highway. And the one that should really be blamed is the one that pointed this direction.
And in all honesty, it's taken us a long time, I think, to really gain some acceptance to the fact that we don't think sometimes people come in and they're just jerks and they're
sometimes they're idiots.
But we're actually reaching a conclusion now, and it's taken us a long time to want to accept the fact that there's so much confusion for some people.
Yeah.
And they really don't know. And they really can't perceive things or walls, or they don't understand what's going on. So it took a lot, I think, to start to tear down some belief systems that I don't even know how I acquired them. I'll be quite frank. I don't know how I acquired them, because I always thought I was open. But I think it's a very interesting, again, statement that goes to show that we've, over our lifespan, whether we realize it or not, through different conversations or through different exposures to different things, have put together belief systems that we need to really relook at. And this happens to be one of them, for us. To be able to look at them. But we still have, a lot of questions. And again, like I said, the goal of all of this is to have you start thinking about it, and have you start thinking about clear intention of what you want to happen to yourself. Now, I don't, and again, here in just a bit, hopefully someone is going to come in to talk about this a little bit, but I don't actually believe you have to know all the answers about what happens on the other side. I think the key is the intention of, I am going to go back to where I am, supposed to be going back. No soul traps, no, false reincarnation grid, no, deception. That my intention is that I may not know exactly what that looks like, but it will happen. I see myself there. I am safe. I am sound. I am doing whatever healing needs to be done with benevolence for my highest good, with no conflicting agenda around me, let's say. I think that type of, intention, if someone comes in, if they need to expand upon it, they'll also expand upon it. So this isn't about scaring anybody. This is about empowering everybody. And so we really want to have the discussion of what we've seen, because we've truly had to break down some belief systems that we didn't know that were entrenched in us. And so,
we want this conversation to help. I don't know if you have a little bit of anything else before asking anyone in you want to say, but I was hoping to get to that pretty quick.
It's just been rather confusing as, you think you know something and you think you know a concept inside and out. Something as simple as ghost. You think, oh yeah, you die, you go on to the other side. Well, it's not as simple as that. Well, we've talked about soul trash, we've talked about the soul trade, we talked about, are we dead? No, you're not. You're standing in my living room, but you would think that's one of those, Fisher Price shape tool moments where, this is where my cynical side of my brain goes going, okay, you're standing in my bedroom at 1:30 in the morning. This is what happened in 2020. All 8 of you have respirators or medical equipment attached to you. And you've obviously elected a spokesperson to speak for you. And you're asking me if you're dead. And past the irritating side and spooky side at 1:30 in the morning, you're also going, really? Like that part of your brain's doing this because how could you not know? And part of you is also assuming that when they died, they've gotten some spark of creation back to them. And that's not necessarily true. But granted, was that creepy when that happened? Was that also irritating as hell when that happened and continues to happen? Absolutely so. And I'm not always as kind as I should be because especially if it keeps happening and it's affecting my health too. So, and I know sometimes aliens are directing this way to irritate the crap out of me, and other malevolence is doing the same. And they're using one victim to throw it at another. And I understand that concept. But that one, where even the woman pulled this respirator thing off her face just to ask me if she was dead. And the only words that were out of my mouth were basically like, oh, shit. Was like that you're standing in my bedroom at 1:30 in the morning with 7 of your friends, and you're nowhere close to the point where you started. Meaning their thoughts or whatever happened or whatever trauma wiped their memory of their death moment, which was more likely very traumatic. Which trauma does create ghosts, lies and deceit and injustices all do it. And the COVID thing fell under injustice category and lies category and trauma category, all 3 of them. Somehow, I know when you're in that energetic state of thought, you can be somewhere else like that. And it's like a power that's uncontrolled. It's just like in the Witcher game series where the character of Cerelia, when she gets into a certain emotional state, all of a sudden, boom, she transports herself somewhere else, but cannot control that particular set of abilities. It's something very similar to that because you have eddies and energy currents and magnetic and energetic fields that run throughout this planet all over the place, intersecting a multitude of dimensional states. And they're just like slip and slides and waterfalls and rapids all over the damn place.
And it could be something as simple as in their mind, they were like, can somebody help me?
Yes.
And another part of them was able to recognize somebody with the ability to see that.
And somebody also could have thrown them our way too, just to scare the crap out of us too. But
yeah, malevolence does that, but on the instant side, it could be something as simple as they're just like, I need somebody to help me, and somehow they have found that energetic signature that another part of them realizes can see.
Yes, and also what they're doing is, and this is the way all galactics travel, is they're one frequency where they're one over here is another. They are tapping into this one. All of a sudden, they're here. That's the way spaceships travel. That's the way portals open. That's the way entanglements happen. Strings form. It's the basic physics of the whole thing of frequencies one to the other. And so that's why it always confused me as to why me. Granted, that's what I do, but at the same time, at the timing that this happens, you can either blame malevolence or confusion or both, or you can just say that's why that person was there at that particular time to get help. I encountered in a dream state an old Chinese lady that was trying to tell us of something that happened. It was intentional on her part that she showed up and was saying some things that were going on in China. I also did a recording of that. I'll try to locate that one as well. That one was actually kind of creepy in and of itself, with an old Chinese lady in a mask at 2 a.m. standing next to your bed after you've just dreamt about her. That can sometimes that gets old, but I see it enough. I was like, oh yeah, old Chinese lady ghost. Yes, okay. But that's about where I was when that happened. I was spooked, but at the same time, I'm looking, going, yeah, okay, I know what this is. So, but that I find it can be irritating, but it's also fascinating as far as the information goes. And as we've been sitting here, in the beginning when you were mentioning your family, I just felt this buildup of energy. It was energetics. It wasn't like I could kind of hear stuff, but it was like it wasn't a garble. That's the wrong word. It was more like a frequency interchange, voices, people speaking, but it echoed a little bit. And I think it's your brother, I want to say, and Jenny. But I feel they're in a mix of like voices in a choir. It's like wherever it's being transmitted from. And a little earlier, I was wondering who was saying. I heard a male voice saying, "Okay, time to have a creepy moment." That's all I heard in my head. And I realized that was your brother Michael saying that, because when he channeled through me the first time, he was pretty creeped by that. So I'm just assuming this was Michael. Okay, because yeah, all right, yeah. But I don't see anybody. That's kind of sometimes disturbing to me. I have to visually see it, and sometimes that's not always completely possible because of the frequency differential. Like when my mother was my great grandmother, I've seen my great grandmother come through. I've seen my grandmothers come through. I've seen my grandfathers come through, but there comes a time where it's more of this feeling, and that's I'm getting that, but I'm also hearing the voices of people that have passed. I do believe one's your grandfather and grandmother, and my mother saw it when Michael came with your grandfather and his dog that
Well,
time.
it's interesting because again, there was, I think it was your grandfather and this dog named Dirt. And I thought, and I just started laughing because this dog, it's a dark dog and its name is Dirt. Well, they knew I would get it. The dog's name, this is when I was a little girl, my grandparents had a dog. The dog's name is Sooty May.
So Soot, Dirt.
So Sooty was Dirt. And so it was an interesting thing because I was like, they knew I would recognize and get what was being said at that time.
Of course, I had to choke right as you were saying something. Give me just a second here. Yeah, that's annoying. But yeah, so we found that rather funny. And I know that's who is listening to this conversation, plus other family members that I'm not seeing. You can just sense them. And of course, my eyes would have to start burning. Yeah, the energy started picking up in here, and my eyes are starting to like boil in their sockets for whatever reason, and it's quite annoying. So, Isaac, why is the body having this reaction? Is this to show an example of what we are talking about at the moment before anybody comes through? It is. Okay. Why do my eyes feel like they're on fire? And this is also quite interesting. This may tie to this. As we were talking, I just further back, all of a sudden I felt like the room was on fire for a minute, and there was smoke in the air, and now my eyes are burning like crazy. So it's like, and I'm choking, going, so like fire. See how there can be effects that have imprinted their way on you. If you ever stood too close to a campfire, you get in the eyes. That's just how it is for me at the moment. And so obviously somebody wants to give this as an example of this type of empathic transference or something of that nature. The lungs are feeling heavy.
Is this because a family member died in a fire?
Yes.
So I did have a family member that I did not know. This was my grandmother's sister, and one of her children died in a house fire.
Okay.
And so I guess
you're saying you saw my
Somebody-
siblings were like in a choir of people.
Uh-huh.
It may just be the choir of extended family.
Yes, and whoever this was a child, and I think I believe this child is a ghost at the moment, and I don't know how far back in time that was, but
Well, it's interesting because that would have been, my grandmother died in her mid-90s. That would have been her niece, because it was my grandmother's sister, I believe. Yes, her sister and her niece that died. So I'm assuming the child would be the younger niece that died.
and there's a little boy too, so probably it was an apartment
Well,
building.
there was another family member. Now, he did not, so I don't know that answer. I did have another family member who was burned severely in a fire, and he was a boy. So I don't know if any of this is related, but I did have a family member who did pass as a younger man, but he was injured in a fire and had burns and the scars from that.
Mhm.
And then again, it would have been his mother, okay, and his sister. Is that right? I hope I'm saying it right. There was that familiar relationship that actually died in a fire. So
Okay, yeah, yeah, this is what, give me a moment, I'm plugging our haunted computer back in here, since it likes to do stupid things.
So I don't know if this
But,
is just extended family, like a whole group of family has decided to make
Yes.
their presence known.
Yes,
As you said, a choir of people.
choir of people, and I think your brother just made a joke. He said choir, or we have acquired people. So, yeah, okay, yeah, that. And I heard Isaac in the back going, "Hardy, har, har." That's a bad joke, sort of thing. But your brother looked like he didn't like. He doesn't look like he well, let me see. No, now I'm starting to see a little more, Michael. Okay. Who's standing next to you? It's hard to see. That would be Jenny. Okay. No offense, Jenny, but I didn't recognize you. You were much thinner. I'm sorry.
She is much thinner.
She's like.
So, I mean, again, we know it seems that a lot of people gravitate, they may give you the appearance if you see them in a dream or whatever, of what you remember, but their soul self tends to gravitate back to, I'm thinking, somewhere in the upper 20s, early 30s, and that time.
I didn't recognize her. She looks like she's like about maybe 25, 30 years old. So it's like, you showed me a picture once of her when she was about that age. She looks about that, but her hair is a little longer, and it's like, I can see some ears that are kind of pointed to, like off this way, with like little ridges that come down back here. So obviously elemental, and your brother's obviously elemental. He said I misspoke then when I said Syrian back then. That's all the only words I knew. But pointed ears were more the standard rather than blunted, like we got a long time ago. And even with hybrid races, sometimes the points are slightly more standard. Elementals, they're definitely standard. With some Tuathans, they're blunted, but that's some of our DNA mutations that got in there that went during the Tuathan Fomorian conflicts where the humans hybrided with different elf races. But a long time ago. But yeah, and your brother's doing this. Yes, we know the history. Yes, okay. Okay, well then who's gonna talk, smartass? Okay, you. Okay.
Willing to try it again. You said last time you would never do it again.
He was how could he put it? He was elected.
You were elected. Last time you were grossed out by the experience.
Yes. What did he's quoting me? He calls it a vomit moment. Oh, and by the way, he says he knows things that have been said. He's been watching Boogie Boogie. So yeah, and
I think every now and then I felt Michael around.
yeah. Oh,
But,
yeah. Whoever burned to death, man, that really is really hot. That's my skin is like on fire because there's two people, one that burned the skin burn and one that inhaled smoke and died, and the eyes are burning and everything. These were little kids. And are they transitioning now? Oh, I can do that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. There you are to the spirit world. There we go. There we go. Two of them, they were holding hands too. They couldn't speak. They were all, the insides were roasted in here and they couldn't talk. I don't know why one's mouth was sealed shut,
but I only think one died in the fire.
So well, I don't know. One was smoke. One was smoke from the smoke. It looked like they inhaled smoke. They did. So it was like.
Well, no, that's what I'm trying to say. One was a mother, one was a daughter. Those are the two that passed. But I did have another family member that were related to them that he got burned, and he did die later as a young man. But
okay,
I don't think they weren't all three in this fire.
Okay, yeah, but they were all kids though. That was the thing. They looked.
He was a child when he got burned.
Okay, that's why he
reverted. When he
that means he reverted back to the point where the burn took place because it was such a loud frequency when that happened. He automatically because what happens is again it's that same concept. There's a frequency here, and if there's some kind of trauma, it goes right back to it. So that's why it goes the same concept, but in the other direction. So, or what do you mean by, he goes, what do you mean by other direction? It's all, okay, yeah, okay, you're a smart ass, okay. He's basically saying I'm being too literal and linear, okay. That's got the concept right, but I'm using human linear terminology, okay, yeah, okay, smart ass, no, you get to talk, okay, you've gotten a little wiser since the last time we talked. You wouldn't have ever said some of these concepts before. Jenny just went, because he wouldn't have known how. I just heard that. So you're not going to talk at all? You just did. I understand you did. Oh, for God's sake. So right, let me see. The whole family is a bunch of smart asses at the moment. So, and whoever's with you, that somebody's laughing in the background there that I don't see. Somebody going, I just keep hearing that in the background. Oh, wait. One's your grandfather, and I think is the shorter grandmother saying, yeah, and we didn't have to identify ourselves, you know, like this, you know.
Grandmother Tina.
Yeah. And there's something heavy off that direction that's hitting me in the chest too. I'm getting some of that smoke from that too. That's why my skin feels like it's on fire still. But he goes, "You must shut up." Okay, all right. People don't need to know the incoherent babblings. Yeah, I understand. All right. Through the crystal, Michael, if you would. If that's your name now, that is. It will do. Okay. Thank you. He goes, it will do, pig. It will do. Thank you. All right. And Isaac goes, he's saying you're fat. All right. Right. That's the joke. Okay. Yeah. That's rough. That's rough waters, guys. Through the crystal. To continue on with the theme before more incoherent, nonsensical babblings, which happen to be correct, I will state that for the record. Yes, there are those that intentionally harm, meaning ghost kind, that do intentionally harm. You've seen these quite often. There are those that do not intend it. And there are those that have been fused to attack, as he calls bound beings. That's slightly, only partially accurate. They have been bound but they've also been partially consumed. So there is it's more of a ingesting fusion type of thing that you'll learn more about later. But just know it is a fusion, but at the same time is more of an ingestion, and it begins to transform the demon. He would say he would use a cartoon reference, whereas an annoying character by the name of Boo consumed another character and then started to become that character, and then became the annoying character he knows. It's more of like a transmutation sort of deal in that respect. And they can do it the other direction, where they can transmute you and infuse that upon you. This is why people also pick up on the empathic transference like we did with the children. And appearances can be deceiving. As you were saying, they weren't all children, they just went back to that stage. It is more of a decoding or encoding issue with the mind, picking up on the frequency that is the most traumatic. The events of today and other days. Yes, I do understand it is quite traumatic when you do not realize it's there. Say you've had something busy going on, you don't recognize it. And you don't recognize it for days on end. And it keeps building and building. This may become maddening. But it is important to remember that not all situations are the same. Not all situations are alike, even though they may have the appearance of similarity or symmetry. They may appear to be the same thing when they're two completely different things. Say you have something that was intentionally thrown at you that would be attacking versus one that's imprinting. It may appear to be the same, and it may appear as if they're both in hostility, because one is scared and one is hostile, or one is actually so scared that they are hostile and are attacking or pushing you into things, which is not necessarily acceptable, mind you. And nor do they need to be in your house. I do agree with him on that. But they're not all the same, even though they have, again, a similarity to one another. It is more like a difference between as he likes to say, a millimeter and a centimeter, or it's exactly the same in other areas, if this makes sense. This is also where I can go into questions.
So, you're talking about, again, it's a pie. There's so many, it seems to be, instead of the few ways that we thought things were, that there's a mirage, just a whole gambit of situations that could occur. And again, that took us years to be willing to accept that it really wasn't simplified like we wanted it to be. Mm-hmm. For some of these, people. I do want to bring up one thing before we get into anything else, because I just don't want to forget. Today, when Chris was dealing with this issue, one, again, when you get so tired of it, being, what happens to Chris, what happens to Chris Mothers, what happens to some other people, and you're just so tired of it that you want somebody at the door to not allow it in, and it was an interesting thing because that was brought up, and there seemed to be more consensus than not that maybe couldn't be accomplished. Mm-hmm. So, for those people that are having this experience and are and do help move people on, if you're getting really frustrated by it, we certainly understand. And we would love to be able to tell you this is how you make it stop. But the truth is, it doesn't sound like that's a big possibility. So, Michael, do you have any suggestions of how things can be maybe minimized at least? We're not sure how to deal with it.
Yes, the minimization is the key here. Yes, they're attracted to your light, very much like moths to a flame or bugs to a bug zapper, things of that nature, or bugs to a flashlight of some sort. Not to denigrate their position. It is something of that similarity. This is why mediums are the way they are. This is why doors open around them on a continuous and constant basis. Is because you are tapping into a frequency that on some level these people know they can be helped. Yes, there are negative beings that do push them your way. to eventually give you that jadedness towards them so that you won't help them. That's part of the reason. But putting a guard in place is not exactly feasible. In some rare finite situations, this has been known to take place. In some situations, depending on the culture, depending on how they were raised, and also depending on where they're from and what they feel that their capabilities are. And eventually this will get to a certain point where this will be possible here on Earth. It can be to some finite extent, as I've said, but they are more, some of those soldiering type of forces are more directed at evil occurrences, like some of the very aliens that do steal the ghosts from time to time, things of that nature. They can't always get to all of this, and it may seem as if they are bowing to the whim of contract or bowing to the whim of some galactic government or something like that. And there are some of those finality type of things in there, and political type things in there. But for the most part, they find ways of assisting in this area. What I'm getting at is in the cases such as these that do show up in the house, is important to remember, even if you are tired of it, which I completely understand this, it would be quite obnoxious to have lines and throngs of them either thrown at you, or they just happen to show up asking if they're dead. I can completely understand this point. But it is important to remember that in the energetic friction that would take place, it would cause more of a fusion with the property of that said ghost or being with the property, or yourselves. Even if they may seem like they are across the room, they could be already entangled with you. It is more like the Twilight Zone physics, whereas the person was partially in the wall portal behind the bookcase, but in all actuality they thought they were further on in, and only half of them was sticking out of it. It is this type of physics very much like that. They are focused and honed in on you. They may seem like they're over there, but they could literally be in your face at the same time. So with that said, the longer that conversation lingers, the more of a chance of entangling can take place. If any advice I could give on this subject, yes, show compassion, but at the same time, if you're being bullied by ghosts that are attempting to beat you up, scratch you, do any of that, this is no different than a thief or a robber in your home or assailant in your home. Get rid of it. This is out of the question. You can't tolerate this. Or a vagrant in your home, squatting, like what happened in there, or damage to your livelihood or damage to your body. Yes, this is something that should not be occurring. Can it be policed 100%? No, it cannot. It is too many and too far, too gone in some areas to completely police, at least this point in history. But make sure that it is watched over quite frequently. Remember, the brighter light you burn, the brighter the flame, the more moths will show up to that flame. And to criticize them for showing up to a flame they thought was, say, the other side, for instance, because they've always been taught it's a light or a fire or a flickering bulb of some sort. To criticize them is slightly unfair, but at the same time, the criticization, to criticize is actually very understood, and it is extremely understood in these scenarios, and how it can completely wear you down. But the ones that you, again, should not tolerate are the mean ones, the ones that want your attention so badly they break things, throw things. This is not tolerable. Granted, this is me saying this, one that has played practical jokes in that particular form myself, but which is not necessarily all bad. It can be quite humorous. but there are also those that are locked in certain behavioral loops, very much like the one you called the babushka lady. She was caught in certain perpetual loops because she had suffered trauma at the hands of the Nazis. And so this cleaning cycle started happening with her. She would go into home after home, rearranging things, rearranging spices and cleaning countertops. This was something that she also had to do around where she died, again, at the hands of the Germans. So knowing the story does help, but also showing compassion towards the kinder ones. But at the same time, it's not always an attack when it's an empathic transference. It's the physics, the natural physics. This is why it needs to be cleared out, because those physics can make it possible for that entanglement to cause these very health conditions to begin with.
So I'm going to bring something up, and I'm going to try and do it extremely quickly, but I feel that probably other people have done this, and I don't know. I'm not actually 100% comfortable with what happened. So I would like your opinion. So yesterday morning, we got up. I had been feeling something, it almost feels like it was doing, this every now and then. It was doing a little bit of it today, just a little bit a while ago, which is probably one of the family members. Mm-hmm. But my point is that in a dream state, when I not last night before last, before I got up, I was in this really unique situation where I was in a home, and I assumed at that point it was my home. No, it wasn't in the environment that we're currently living in the Arizona area. It was more of an environment that you would think was more East Tennessee, green lawns, trees, things like that. And, there was a horse and buggy kind of, flatbed, and multiple people. And I see outside the window, they're out at the spigot drinking themselves water. And I guess they were going to be giving the horse a drink. And I went out there, and I don't remember exactly the conversation or whatever, but they were going to leave, and they start down the driveway. And something inside of me is like, you know what, I have a room, and I knew they were, like, in my mind, homeless, that there was this extra room. It was used as an office sometimes or whatever, and it had a door to the outside. So I said, please come back and ask them to go into this room. Now, this room wasn't huge, and there were quite a few people. And the one funny thing was, this woman came into the hallway and basically said, you expect all of us to sleep in this room? And I just was taken aback a little bit, because I was like, wow, that's some gratitude, right? I'm trying to I think I said something to the effect of, let's just try and figure this out. Okay. Something to that effect. And then as I look down the hallway, I see a child playing in a whole nother room. And in my mind, before I let them into that room and asked them to come in my mind, in my dream, I said, oh my God, Chris is not going to be happy about this, right? So he's not going to be happy. So I get up, and we're sitting having breakfast, and I'm explaining all of this to Chris, and I'm not really quite sure, why I'm having this dream or what's going on. Well, what Isaac did chime in at the time and basically said that I had created a construct, and they say I had created it. I'm sure it was, me, Avatar, maybe with really the help of the higher self, because I don't remember creating anything. I'm just in this space. That basically to keep some of these ghosts from coming to our home. Mm-hmm. Right. So they were created, a construct was created where people were coming, but they were kind of intercepted at this one particular point, kind of given shelter. And when I heard that, I was like, well, okay, but who's going to help move them on now? And then there was all this confusion, like, no, you're just kind of holding them there, and then they can move on when they want. And then there was another little incident where the child that I saw, there was some issues over that, trying to help the child move on or whatever. But my point is that I can't imagine, I'm the only person in the world that's ever made a construct who's been tired of ghosts and has kind of funneled them into a construct. but is really that what you should be doing? Because I have mixed feelings over, I don't want to trap anybody, but we didn't want them coming here.
But you are correct, though. It was more of a funnel, and it was more of it started to look like it was turning into a gridlock or a bottleneck, where it was getting full and full and full. One addition you could make to a construct such as this, you can put the intention towards this, is that there is a door within that construct that strictly goes to the spirit world. Then they would not bottleneck like this. You were more or less concerned that they would end up here, and you were attempting to run interception in that way and block, which is good. But you can also make an opening to true spirit, and they will go straight for the funnel or the bottleneck versus that of your home. That is actually a very excellent idea to do. You did do this in your dream state. Granted, a few stragglers got through, but it wouldn't have been the thousands and thousands and the throngs and throngs of them. What they are seeing from their perspective is when they approach this funnel, is just going to be a roadside, like Old West motel sort of thing, or saloon, or brothel, or whatever the hell they want to see it as. This is something that you helped construct like it was a way station. And this was actually very smart, and it will remain there. Even the soul hunters won't be able to pass through the doors of this place. Hence why they also like to come to your house, because your orgone field makes it possible for the soul hunters not to enter the home. It's a construct that is very similar in its construction. This is something that was inspired, yes, by your, what you would call higher self or oversoul, along with yourself, where you did not want them entering the home anymore. As for the ghosts that did show up here afterwards, there was more to that story than you know. The two that were around, or the three that were around actually, were indeed as they appeared. But the story behind which is actually quite tragic. The Native American man that you ran into, he was actually more of a thief in that time frame, joined a gang of thieves, and actually had a son with a prostitute. In that instance, he was killed in a saloon fight in your Old West time frame, and so was his son, because it was over not so just cards, but it was over women. It was over the very woman that actually bore him a son. These were, granted, these were all events that these people brought on themselves, not necessarily the child, but that all of the, let's say, cowboys brought on themselves when egos clash and hormones clash and all of this, and when drunkenness clashes. This is exactly what took place. And did he know that he had crossed or was dead? Yes, he did. But he also did not count on his son being the wanderer, let's just say, as maybe a 4-year-old would do. That's how old he was. And he wandered away from the area where they died, which is not too far from this location. It was more or less in the Prescott area over. And they were indeed in a saloon, a very building that you too have been in. That was also a brothel at one time. You call it the Palace. He was one of them from that particular area, and followed, the son followed you back from the downtown area when you were gathering supplies. This in turn had the father led to you, and other beings did lead them here. Did they have frictional energy to them? Yes, I did, because there was a great deal of aggression and trauma, and that was the aggression that was being projected into the household. And when they got it back, or when he got it back, he did not expect this. And the little child was also quite aggressive in his stance as well, because a little fear, but was more aggressive in his stance as well, because he himself over the decades has been quite mischievous, moving objects, throwing things, knocking things on shelves, losing his temper, things of that nature. He did not speak, but he has moved some of your objects as well in a short time that he's been around. Some are far more aggressive than they should be, but knowing this particular story does give you context as to what took place.
And again, something you said earlier, Michael, is that you may not want to spend the time continuing on to find out the whole story.
You can afterward.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially, I guess, if you're feeling that friction, you really don't want to do it.
It was an echo of his friction that was being reflected back at him. It was volleying back and forth because it was the entanglement that was actually forming.
So, oftentimes Chris is like, I'm just going to open the portal, or open the door, whatever you want to say, to go to the other side. But one of the crazy things that happens is a lot of resistance. And he literally is pushing them, forcing them to go over to the other side, throwing them over. I think the hard thing about that, again, so I'd like your opinion about that, is, again, overarching in our culture, maybe other people's culture, is that's not being very kind, right? So Chris is not being very kind. I mean, there's certain things that I think we do get correctly and that you've already stated. It's not healthy. It's not healthy to have these ghosts and spirits around you. There can be an infusion and imprinting, illnesses, moods, or whatever can start to imprint upon you. They need to be moved on. They need to be moved on as quickly as possible. Chris sometimes has had to force the issue with as much strength as he can. So
normally, one person would not necessarily be able to completely do that. Most of the mediums you see out there get them to do this of their own volition, or they leave them in place if they cannot do so. Most of the ones that mediums pass over are ones that have accepted the guidance and move on their own. It's in part to the medium's guidance, but as a guide, but at the same time they've moved on their own. The ones that fight generally are not crossed over by anyone.
So he has successfully, I think, pushed them on to the other side. But if you run across something then that is wanting to fight you about it and you're not able to push them over, how do you get rid of them then? How do you get them out of your space so that you won't have that entanglement?
There are certain techniques that keep ghosts away. Your salts do it to some extent, but not all of them. Just like all colors, like flags and colored stones, do not always keep away every single type of thing. Your red cloth over your mirrors and your televisions works beautifully for ghosts and demons alike. I know people do not like a lot of red around their house, but it tends to repel a lot of these particular things. Red clothing does too, to a certain extent, but there are also other things that might become aggressive as because of it, because it's just like the bull on the matador with the red cloth. Sometimes that does this. It will form aggression in some rarer instances. The way you keep ghosts off of your property, part of which you're already doing by closing the circles with sessions. Thinning some of those out might not hurt when you get the other business propositions going. The thinning those out a little bit, but the way a regular Joe, let's just say, keeps them out of the house. Intention is one of them, salt one of them, as you've been using. Some of these pieces you've been using, absolutely so, but at the same time, sagings, incenses, doing things of that nature, but also manifesting it through the intention and through mantras that do keep away said ghosts, basically saying your light or the spark of creation that you're giving off is not necessarily the light that they want to come to, that they are to go through a doorway to spirit or something to that effect. You are better
Or
left.
even the construct that's been created
And that
for them.
construct.
And then when they're ready to find that door to go to the other side, they're gonna find it.
Yes, in that construct that you've made, you can create a door that is clearly marked with like a gold sign on it or something of that nature. At the moment, they've gridlocked in that particular construct. Your intention can be to create a door that only goes that direction, not to any other dimensional state or expressional state would bring it through the other direction. You do not want something else breaking in there. Make it that it only goes one direction, very much like a fire door only goes one direction, and that they will go and not bottleneck and go through and look like they're looking at a trailhead ahead or anything like that. You do not want them blocking the doorway either. You can make it so that it widens and narrows according to how many need to go through, or how many refugees. This is how they're acting in the moment, like they're refugees, being or escaping a war. This is how they're reacting in that place, or they're trying to drink away their sorrows, which is asinine. They're ghosts. So little humor there, but things of that nature where you, even if you have to write it, go for it. But at the same time, it's most of the intention that does this. But keeping them out of your home, you are already doing it for the normal sets of circumstances with the pieces you put out, the salt you put out, with the sagings you put out. Some ghosts might like the sage or the smell. Some may bring in a smell of their own. And this is also a telltale sign that you have something that's mostly smells of when they're around. Keeping them out, don't leave any conduits for them to come in. Make sure when you enter your home that you are actively shaking off or wiping your feet at the door, so that essentially, so you're not bringing in the entanglements of others. Essentially the same as wiping your feet, like your footsteps blessing, or basically saying anything that has followed you home does not get to cross the threshold of the home. Anything that's not for the highest good of you and the home and the highest vibrations of you and the home cannot cross the threshold. Does not mean they won't hang out in your yard. Just remember that they may hang out there and pace and do stupid things in your yard that you don't want them to do. Just know that if you do not want them in your home or on your property, you have to declare this, especially if you've gone to, say, some haunted location, or if you've gone to an historic place or something of that nature. And you have been doing, again, the right things with the pieces, with the sages, with the stones. You're doing everything that a regular person could get away with doing and not have a thing go wrong. It's just that your guys' chosen profession, your essence burns a little brighter. Therefore, they in their minds, they think light, heaven, or light of heaven. This is what they are thinking, or light of God, which they're not completely wrong there. But this is why you also have to cloak that and make sure that intention is put out there, that you walk that intention, that that particular light is not going to attract these wayward souls towards your direction. When you implement all these things, you will see it minimized to its nth degree. But it cannot be promised that you won't get a straggler here and there.
Okay, well, thank you. So again, talking about those that are still living and they're human in their avatar and they haven't crossed over. So again, the show isn't to scare. It's just to have a serious, kind of conversation about what we're discovering. So of course, I always want to leave this again with some sort of empowerment. So a person who's living now, right, hasn't reached the moment of crossing or anything, what can they do now basically to help themselves empower that whenever that moment comes, that they can, cross over more, let's say, effectively to where they really want to be?
This is a good question. This is, do not take the hands of any beings, for one. If anything comes to greet you, cast it aside. Your family, your true spirit and soul family, waits for you on the other end of that intention. Those beings that come for you are attempting to block you from that. if they are extending their hands through ceilings, up through floors, or trying to shake your hand and usher you over. No, these are soul traders, one and all. You would say these as angels. Again, this is of Orion origin, or negative Syrian, or however you want to interpret some of these things. There are so many different variations of this, you don't even have a number for it, or at least not one known to you at the moment. So knowing this, and even the artificial intelligence involved in the white light tunnel and all of those things, that's one variant of the soul trap types. It is important. If anything is coming for you and they're wanting to take you, that is not sovereignty, that is not freedom, that is slavery and servitude. The intention must be without doubt of where you are going. Not that you are worried about going to said one of these places. It's good that it's been informed about, but not to be dwelled upon. You have family over where you need to go. You have that intention of yours will open the right pathway. Even if you got stuck in a soul trap one, the intention is always to the right of the light. Not at the light, to the right of it. When you go there, you go into the real spirit world, whatever you wish that form to take. You will then heal, or what people consider healing, because you'll be transmuting all the junk that you have basically wiped your tried to wipe your feet at the door with. There, it is not necessary to wipe your feet. You are doing so as you tread the grounds of spirit. In that, then you can choose to go back to your galactic form or elemental form, or whichever place you wish to go. And if the oversoul your oversoul, or all of you intends to stay exactly where you are, that is also a good thing as well. You are then back into the entirety of your library, like your Frank Frazetta did when he came through, or your Jeremy Brett did when he came through. Even though he was a dimensional world, it is still the same. This, your intention is so strong. This is why others wish to hijack it, because it is all powerful in that way, where you literally walk the path. You could literally, the way ghosts are stumbling towards your path, you could literally become the frequency by which you are going to. It must be absolute. You must know exactly where you are going. One step and you are there. Just like when he opens the portal and shuts it or sweeps it over a bunch of ghosts. It is the same. One step and you are with your family in spirit. That's all it takes, is that intention. Here. Again, if anybody's trying to usher you towards that, that is asinine, because it is not necessary for that to take place. And they know this just as much as I do. They do not care, because they are wanting to usher you to a place they want you. You go where you want. This is essentially all there is to it. It may sound like I'm oversimplifying, but it's literally, you become the path to where you need to be.
Well, thanks, Michael. And I really don't know what else to ask, so I just want to let you say whatever it is that you would like to say.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this was not necessarily as creepy as last time. I have actually gained more insight since last time, even though I did enter what you both thought was my, you would say, purest galactic form or elementalish form. That wasn't necessarily true. It was more of a way stop point to regaining more of what I currently am speaking of now. There were a lot of tricksters back in the day that you were talking, even though I was speaking then. There were a lot of tricksters and a lot of blockers then. There's far less of them now. It may not seem that way, but there are far less of those type now. You may be getting a few more of the heavier hitters and a lot of human sources doing things either through magic or technology, and alien sources. This is no lie. But where I am currently standing, I am part of more totality of my library. I am, you would say, more of an elementally based being. You would see elf, but that is not necessarily completely accurate. Jenny is the same way, where she said you would gain greater insight as you walked your path more and more. Even the term elemental is slightly out of date. because there's so many mixed beings that are out there. Suffice to say, I am in a physical form, so is she, but it is different than what you are expecting. Know that we are one with the vastness of our library, but the intermediary is more of a what you would consider to be an elemental and or galactic type of form. This is really all that I would be able to say on that until you comprehend more, until you're further along your path. Just know from where you channeled me first to now, I have gained a greater fusion, or you would call it a mantling, with my oversoul-esque form, creating a best of qualities of both. And even my name has altered from that point, as may both of yours. When you get to that point as well, you may choose a different name, a seal, or affinity in that way. Just like you have La Serenity, he has Torrent Kal, in maybe even a century's time, that may be vastly different. That tonal frequency quality may be vastly different to where you have fused more with the best qualities of all, and that may even change. And for us, it has, from what we started out as even a long time ago, and even as Michael or as Jenny, that has changed. So this is where I wanted to leave this. I will be able to communicate more frequently now that this has been recognized. And I have been around, you just have not seen me. Jenny has been around, you have just not seen her. Dirt has been around too, you just not have seen him. And your grandfather and grandmother have been around, you've just not seen them. You were never alone, you were never forgotten. You were always seen, and you were always loved deeply. This is also something my human avatar probably would not have said very often, but it is the truth. So this is where I must leave you. So thank you, everybody listening to this, and blessings to all. Oh man, that screen's pretty blurred, isn't it? All right. Sorry, the lighting sucks in here, folks. It's actually dark out now. Apparently, we've been doing this a while. It is past. It's about 8:39 p.m. here. So yeah, I didn't realize the screen was that fuzzy. But yes, he did quite a while. If you go back in the episode list, I have no idea what the episode is. It's further back when we were still doing the audio episodes, I think. It's when we were transitioning from the East Coast over here. We were in Liberty, Missouri at the time when that episode was being filmed or recorded. And he came through at the time. He looked like a blue elf then, or like Syrian-esque form. I tend not to trust the Syrian-esque forms. I feel like they're like a lower and have a like lower vibrational anchor to that particular soul group, if that makes any sense, or they're like a more further from soul light type of being, or like how vampires and Fomorian Orions are, they have no soul. There, I'm thinking some of the lower Syrian type beings are in that category, but somewhere in between. His though was more of a transitional, but I wasn't seeing a lot of the facial features. We were just using terms we were familiar with, and it really, he couldn't be any further from the mark than what I originally thought that he was. And his energy is much greater than what it was before. It's this initial thumbprint or boot print, but it's far more expanded, just like another person that came through on Galactic Interstellar Council, where we knew her in life is one way, and people that her family and friends that were around her don't recognize her because her energy is so much more vast. It's still the same thumbprint, but the attitude is vastly different and the form is vastly different. And in size, they're much larger because that person's actually a 150-foot giant in their other expressional value or expressional vibrational value. Michael's the same way, Jenny's the same way. It's so different that it just around this house, it wasn't recognized. Or it was not seen for what it was because it was so immense. I always say, I said this on Galactic Interstellar Council, there's this cartoon where this guy's going through the woods and he knows there's a giant in the woods somewhere. And he's looking around, he's leaning up against a giant foot and a giant leg, but he's not seeing it because nobody's expecting a gigantic foot and a gigantic sandal and a gigantic leg standing next to a giant tree. Nobody's expecting it. They're looking around going, I know there's something here. I just can't see it. And he turns around, he's like, Like then he's looking up. Like in the movie The Arrival, when she goes into the environment where the aliens are and they're like 150 feet tall, and she's like this. All she was seeing was that much. So that's all that was recognized in the movie was this much, but the aliens are humongous. So they're like redwood trees, so or sequoias. So that's exactly the example I'm using. Well, you're not seeing the forest for the trees. You're just seeing like maybe a piece of the bark or something like that. Going, this feels like the texture of the person, but this doesn't feel the same. That's exactly what it is. You're expecting this. You're expecting this person when they're this bigger immensity, and you're not expecting that. So that's and yes, you're giving me the thumbs up. That they're giving me the thumbs up on that one. That they're not the same as when they left. This is why we weren't seeing. We were feeling something weird around here. We knew family. They're like we couldn't put our finger on it because we were thinking of it in human terms. Even though they are physical somewhere else, we're still thinking of it in the way our brain decodes and encodes things, and we're thinking too linear. But or also we're thinking too much too. It's more here, and it's more intuitive and soul wise, and the brain and the heart working together. It's that combination. We just weren't perceiving it or picking up on perceiving it or decoding it correctly. Perceptions and perspectives will always lie to you. That's what somebody told me years ago, being told me many years ago. And that's always true. The eyes will always lie. That's why they weren't completely showing themselves. They wanted me to feel them out. And then when I realized it was truly them, but different, then I knew enough to bring them in. The mind actually could perceive them differently. So I believe this is where we could leave this. If you have anything else to add, also the affirmation of blessing. But I'm thinking this is where we can leave this episode with all of you. So did you want to do the affirmation?
Sure. Again, we bless everyone that's listened to this show now and in the future. And we hope that you will remember that when it is your time, it is just one step away. Set your intention and know that your family are there to greet you. And so blessings to everyone who has listened to the show.
Yes, and your brother just reminded now everybody listening to this just exactly like you blessed everyone at his funeral.
Oh,
so
that's a whole nother story.
The whole other story. Let's just say the pastor was upset that she blessed everyone at his funeral.
You know, I just do what I feel like I need to do. I didn't know that I was stepping on a lot of toes. Apparently.
Yeah, and you can't do that in the Christian religion. And she managed it with the law of one to release all the people from a lot of bindings that a being in the church was binding.
Michael liked it, and it was all about his funeral.
Yeah, and he wanted to remind everybody that at his funeral, he was laughing at the fact that you disrespected the parish. So he found that hilarious. He was more of like in more of a, it would be like a more of a metal mindset, like a heavy metal mindset versus that of like churchgoer mindset. So he found that very, very funny. You know, kind of like Metallica versus like choir. You know, it's like that's how where he was. He was like in the Metallica camp right there. So it was like the heavy metal camp. So yeah.
I didn't even know I was offending anybody.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll tell you one thing before we go. The pastor was standing behind her as she was blessing for like 15 minutes. The parish while she was getting everybody to do the law of one essentially, and the pastor was behind her going. And then I was trying not to laugh. Her brother was actually there laughing next to me. I had a tear running down my face. I was trying not to laugh at a funeral, kind of like that TV episode where somebody's laughing at a funeral because they were thinking of funny things. It's that kind of thing. And he was trying to get me to laugh. I was like this. And then I explained to her when we were outside the church what had actually occurred. And that's what he was reminding of us now. He goes, moments like that are true blessing, he says. Not the board collective that you were speaking to that day. He says, now he's turning more back into Michael. So it's like, okay, just something to think about, food for thought. So, and not in the demonic sort of way. So now he's more like your brother. Okay. So thank you. All right. Now I believe we can cut this off before more shenanigans send it off on a tangent. So thank you everybody for listening to this episode. This is one of our YouTube episodes here about basically about the ghosts wondering if they're dead. Are we really dead? Sort of thing. And your brother wanted to chime in one more thing. He goes, only certain things are dead as they walk. Meaning The Walking Dead, the zombies you encounter from day to day. That is all. Okay. All right. That's a bit of humor. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye now. Okay. I ran into this in the middle of the night. This was weird, but it kind of made sense when I got around to looking into it. This is a situation with a ghost, whereas this was a victim of a crime. This person appeared in our room in a dream in the middle of the night. You know how you do work in your sleep? This applies. First off, I was seeing this strange set of apartments. This is how it started, and then it ended up with this person in our room. I'll go from this point. I was walking in an apartment that also looked like a school or like a mall type of center. This was built like how you see structures in Japan or China. This was not American architecture. This was something they would have interlocked together. And each section had a set of glass that you would be buzzed past, like a door that had glass, like how a school would be. And some people walking through. I think it was an old school building that was being reused as apartments. And they like to reuse everything. So the people were walking through, and you had to be buzzed into this other set of rooms that was back there. And I remember seeing a young Chinese lady in her 30s, 40s, my age, about 30s, 40s. Decided, that she was going to show me this apartment and this whole apartment complex. Well, then it rewound back to us in our room, and there was this old Chinese lady that came walking into our room with this really horrid look on her face, like this kind of look, like this. And really concerned and scared and worried. And then she looked to be like in her mid-80s. And didn't speak. And this, I woke up Joanna. This was in our bedroom in the dream sequence. And this was, Joanna got up. Said, "Oh my God," like she knew to help this person, to be concerned for that person, like she does in her dreams. So we were both kind of cohabiting and worked together in this. And this old lady, we took her hand, and she led us back to that same building in the here and now, which was sparsely populated. It was not run down, but it was just older. And it was very few people were walking through it. And it was in a neighborhood that very few people went to. It looked like there was not a whole lot there. And we were looking for her name. And her name came up as Tam, Tam, or Tammy. She would go by Tammy. But that's obviously not her Chinese name. Or it could be Tam, with an apostrophe in there. That's just how I was interpreting the name, because I don't know all the Chinese names that are out there. So I'm thinking it was Ta'am or something like that. Because the family surname is the one over here in the hyphen or the apostrophe, and then you got the person's name over here, like Ta'am or Ta'em or something like that. Yeah, it was like that. I don't know Chinese names, so please don't be offended, anybody that sees this. But what happened was, I came to figure out that she was a victim of what the Chinese are currently doing right now. They are basically quarantining and starving their own people. They're not being fed. And they're just letting them die off. It's a culling.
And for people who respect their elders, supposed to be respecting their elders and everything, that sure as hell ain't it. And they just quarantined and just left them to die. And I feel just like with the Uyghurs, the genocide of the Uyghurs and all that stuff, and some of their own people being tortured that are more Christian oriented and stuff like that. Same difference with this. And I've gotten victims of those other crimes too. I haven't gotten any Uyghurs at all. I think they went to somebody else, unless they were in some of the crowds of ghosts that I've had to pass on. But this old lady came rushing into our room with great concern and didn't speak, like I said, had a mask on. It was just a normal attire. I think underneath there was the clothes she was wearing was more hospital oriented, but similar. And this she was showing us this building. So the young version of her was showing us how it used to be. The old version of her was showing how it is now. And that means the reason it's sparsely populated is because they let all those people die. And as I've said, ghosts can only form in a few different ways. Injustice being one of the main ones, lies, somebody being held, and unmourned deaths. So this falls under injustice, lies, and unmourned. It falls under all those because somebody obviously didn't care enough to put their name anywhere. She was basically trying to say she existed. And by showing us looking for her name to be buzzed into the place in the here and now shows that she wasn't there anymore. They'd completely erased the name from the list. Anybody they just allowed to die, they just erased them. And for a supposed spiritual people that are supposed to know better, not only should they know that this is wrong, but that it generates ghosts even in their own history. Some of these things have been said. So, they're not even paying attention to that. But this is what that was said, that she was erased. Those people are erased. They have no names. It's kind of like the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, but at least those people are honored. This was they were just tossed aside, kind of like the Holocaust victims that had no names until when you give somebody a name, when you find out their name, it can also put them to rest. If they're unknown, that falls under unmourned, unknown or nameless. That I suppose you could put that in a new category, fourth one. But this that's like what they were saying in The Witcher, like names are powerful seals. This falls under that category. Because this person's name was unknown. I believe her name was Tam. I believe it was pronounced Tam, or that's what she went by. But that's what I was seeing. First, I thought it was Pam or Pammy, but it was Tam or Tammy, and that's what somebody called her. So that's what she preferred. I didn't see birth name. I just remember Tam, which again I could be mistaken. It could be Tam, but with a hyphen or something in there, or apostrophe. But at any rate, her story is acknowledged. And by also acknowledging that, including the name, including the injustice, all of that, it puts something into the benevolent Akedic as to basically disassemble that ghost. Sometimes you have to put them across to the other side. I remember having to do that for this person in the middle of the night, or at least for a form I saw standing in our real room. I didn't completely see. I was half awake or half asleep. But I'm thinking that was who that was trying to transmit that to us. Wherever she is, she's with the family that or the people that also were victims of this in the spirit world. So this is what we ran into today. This just keeps continuing. Even though I said sometimes the occurrence of multiple ghosts is part of the hamster wheel, where they keep being brought to you to disrupt you. In this case, this was more of a genuine case, like a genuine individual case with somebody with a name. Not that those other people are nameless. I'm just saying, in this occurrence, this was just one person that had one story. Very much like the young woman that came to me one time that had been killed by her own father. Because he found out she was gay and killed her for it because, he was a psychopath. But one of her story told. This is no different, and a lot of them stories are told this way. So this is where I will end this little sad tale. So it is 7:39 a.m. Monday, January 10th, 2022. Thank you. Here's another example of a ghost occurrence. This is one that happened to me in Lincoln, Nebraska. Again, that house was haunted as holy hell. But the Belmont area of Lincoln, I probably could not live in again. That's a stark weather area. The energy sucks there. Always has. I wondered why we were going insane there, because the place is full of ghouls, and it's from some of the horrible energies there. I shouldn't say full of ghouls. That's wrong. But a few and a lot of ghosts. And from the Starkweather time frame, as well as other eras, Earth history eras. So, what happened there one time was I had this dream where this guy had his house broken into. He was in a wheelchair. Then had this gang bust into his place, guys in hoodies, and had this one guy that obviously was a leader. He was black, had darker skin, but not black, and then had blue hoodie on. And they picked him up, and his quote in the dream was, I thought it was me for a minute, but I was speaking as him. And he, what happened was he said, don't pull me out there, I'll fall, or something like that. Or they took him outside and they killed him. And I remember a gunshot, and I woke up, and there's this guy standing in my doorway in the middle of the night. This guy that's standing in the doorway. Winston saw him too. Our miniature schnauzer at the time saw him, and didn't bark. Just stood there and looked at him, or laid there and looked at him, and he just wanted to be acknowledged. But he was walking. He wasn't in a wheelchair. What had happened was the next, or that night, that woke, the next day when I woke up that evening, there was a report on the news and said there was this guy that got into a shootout with the cops, and the cops killed him. It was the very guy that had killed the guy in the wheelchair. They even said in our neighborhood there was a man in a wheelchair that had died because this gang broke in, and then the leader of this gang got killed by the cops later on. And they put his face on the screen. It was the very same guy. What I was getting were hauntings of both sides. I wasn't seeing the guy in the hoodie. I was seeing the guy that had the injustice against him. But I was getting some of the energy of the assailant. So the suck energy of the assailant. So it happened not even a block down from our house in the Belmont area. That area was turning into a real shithole when we left, unfortunately. But it was an area where a lot of drug deals would go down, and people, they'd have commit crimes in the houses and stuff like that. But it turned out that, he moved on from that point. And when I saw the face of the assailant, that's when he moved on. So we were getting both ends of the spectrum. So everybody goes to the same place. People would like to think people would go to hell or heaven. That's religious BS. You all go to the same place, and you all transition through into the same place. So the spirit world. So they both went together, essentially. And the gang, I don't know what happened to the street gang, but the leader was killed, and then, of course, their victim. But they had also, I know, some energy lifted around that time, because when the leader was shot by the cops, and then they identified him on the news, other victims had moved on as well. And so they named all the victims. Again, back to the names. They named all the victims and of that gang, and all those souls moved on too. It's, again, an injustice. So this is something that I've seen quite a bit. Through 2020, we got people in masks showing up here, in hospital gowns and everything, victims of the mass deaths of the COVID-19 conspiracy. But it was really, these were murders. These were people that were murdered. This was an injustice. So that's lies were being told. That's another thing. They said, oh yeah, COVID got them when it was they were killed, murdered, smothered, whatever. The families weren't allowed to see them, so how would you know what happened to the bodies? And somebody photographed people in hazmat suits taking wrapped up bodies and burying them out back. And also not burying them, but slowly incinerating them in an incinerator. Somebody managed to get a photograph of that. But that is again, that falls under injustice. But they end up here in our bedroom asking if they're dead or not. And I'm not quite sure always how they don't know that. I know sometimes the aliens are manipulating them and throwing them to people's properties and wiping part of their memory mentally or telepathically, so they don't know that they died, or part of the trauma has been wiped out. It has to be discovered. It has to be acknowledged. Just like I had an old man come to the psychic fair and wanted to hear from his wife that had passed away. And he said it was COVID that did it. I didn't contest him. He was already distraught. And the wife came through immediately, told me, please don't tell him how I died. It was not COVID. They killed me. He can't do anything about it. It will just worry him. It'll make him upset. Please do not tell him how I died, just that I'm around. And some secrets, I hate secrets, but some, I guess, should be kept at times like that. And another person in Lincoln, this one goes back to Lincoln. This was more of a famous case. I won't mention the two people involved in this, but there was this famous case where this guy's body was found in the Badlands up in the Dakotas, and his spouse or his girlfriend, she ran a shop there in Lincoln for a while, and when he turned up dead, she just kind of checked out at that point. Didn't really want to run the business anymore and all that other stuff. But what happened was he came to me while I was standing there with him, looked with her. He looked right at me and said, please don't tell her how I died. She can't do anything about it. So some secrets in that way, when the person's already acknowledged or that soul's already acknowledged, are okay, so you're not causing more fear energy and more distraughtness here. So eventually these things will come out. There's some things not better left forgotten. Of course, you can't forget them. I wouldn't forget them. I found out how he died was he had his head severed by a Draco in the Badlands, there in the Dakotas. And what happened was they caught him in one of the canyon areas and tore his head off. And And that's how they found it. And the cops didn't really tell anybody they found the headless body until over a year later. The reporters kind of slipped it out a little bit and said they found that body headless. And they never found the head. But that was year and a half later. They announced that. Because they had found another one, so they wanted to compare it to the last one. In the same area, they found another one. But it was, the first one was said to be that guy. And then, he came in and said, please don't tell her how I died. Now the information's out, but at that time it wouldn't have served to say, oh yeah, your boyfriend was killed by a Draco, had his head torn off, his spine ripped out, and was eaten after that. Now, that wouldn't have served at that time. So, there was 2 Draco that killed him in the canyon area. So be careful, folks, when you go into areas like that. You can hike and everything, just do it during the day. He was, I think he was at night. He'd gotten lost, like the Draco had telepathically influenced him to get lost. And then the sun went down, and then they came out and killed him. But and then they found what was left of the body. They said animals had gotten to it too, and it's like, kinda. But that's some of the ghost occurrences that I saw in Lincoln. When I was there, and then also the ones here with what I called the Sea of Ghosts, with all the people with the masks on and the hospital gowns. A friend of ours in England saw the same thing with the people in the hospital gowns, and saw they had been murdered too. It wasn't COVID-19; it was murder. So they just labeled it as such. It was a culling. It was that was done in the background on mass, like a Holocaust type of situation. So they wanted to come around to make sure we knew that. Even though aliens were influencing the ghosts a couple of times to come by here, even the ones from different eras, it didn't make their story any less important. So remember that, though, folks. This is another thing for the Paranormal Files when we get that part of the website put up. So, and subscription put up. So here is, there it is. It's 8:07 a.m. Monday, January 10th, 2022. Thank you.
All right. To end this episode off, I mentioned this in some of the Witcher recordings too, but I'll sum it up for this since this was a synchronicity. After this episode, later in the evening, I went to go play my Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Edition game. And there was in the Witcher, inventory, there was a severed griffin head in the inventory. And I had killed no griffin in the game. You get to take trophies from all the beings. And there was a griffin head in there. And subsequently, there have been more griffin heads that have popped up in the inventory. And I haven't killed a griffin in the game in a very long time. And quite some time since the very, very beginning of the game. Only one of those was like a legitimate kill. There's about maybe 4 or 5 of them in there now, since the time we filmed this show. So I just thought I would tell everybody of that synchronicity, Griffin being Michael and Jenny's last name, Griffin. And also, I would like to point out that there were some Tartarian Empire synchronicities as well, which also is the Griffin. I'll have other recordings on that on our subscription here at some point, but I do wish to say that too was a synchronicity because the Griffin is the Tartarian flag, blue and yellow, like Ukraine. That was the empire that preceded that, or the last vestiges of it, which is what preceded that of the Khazarian Empire, and now Ukraine. Just so I thought I would bring that up. There were some synchronicities with that. I won't go completely into it. It would take too damn long. I'm just saying that there were synchronicities with Griffin, both on one end of the spectrum family and other end of the spectrum Tartarian. So I thought that was interesting, like that was Joanna's family's origin point, or one of them was from that Griffin flag. And also the fact that the severed heads have kept appearing in the game. That's more than likely Michael's doing, because he made a point afterwards to say Isaac wasn't the only one that could mess with the computers. and mess with game consoles and the like. So we know that was him. So I'll keep going along here. It is 1:47 p.m. Thursday, August 4th, 2022. Thank you.